Welcome to Seizing Valor, where we discover God's path for manhood, one conversation at a time. I'm Joe.
And I'm Zack.
Today we are going to be talking about submitting to authority. Now, we'll go more in detail in a bit, but submitting to authority is not an absolute. There's, caveats to that. We're going to go through those details, especially being a part of Western culture as well. There are some caveats and a lot of people with differing opinions, so I'm excited to talk about that.
And that there is an importance to submitting to authority, that it is one of our moral obligations as men and just as Christians. It is one of our obligations. But as Joe said, there are different facets to that.
Yeah, what made this a really attractive topic in my eyes is that, Western culture, I would have to say that it's encountering right now like some crisis of authority, so to speak. There's a cultural revolution. I know that a lot of people say culture war, so whatever, that's been thrown around in the last 5, 6, 7 years. It's been occurring, actually, in my opinion, for the past several decades, and it's led people to like this rejection in a way on claims to authority. Children disobey parents. We're seeing that more and more often now. And me as a school teacher, I see that quite a bit. They disobey parents, with impunity. And, people reject even leaders in church too, rejecting government and other social institutions. And, that has its place because, we have reservations, politically speaking, but that's a whole different topic for another time. In some cases, various authorities, they brought on this rejection themselves, for example, whether it be poor leadership. Yet that's not true in every case. Even many good and faithful authorities are rejected. And we live in a culture that hates authority right now.
America was essentially formed
out of rebellion.
And rebellion, and like us shaking off our British monarchs and creating our own society. So there's even in our creation as a nation, there's some legitimizing of rebellion or for rejecting authority. Which we'll talk about we'll talk about a little later, like when there is justified versions of rebelling against authority.
Sure.
And, but this idea is that sometimes I think into our culture, it gets bled into like every time you're a rebel, that's a good thing, that like, it's that being, that, I don't know, there's something about in our culture where the rebel is praised, or like people think that you're always justified in rebelling against authority or rejecting authority, because it's just kind of like in our culture and in the, like America, like in just the American blood. So I think that's difficult, and it is tricky because there's a lot of institutions that do have people in them that abuse power and abuse authority. But then I think, unfortunately, we take those people and then we blanket that the result of wanting to, like, of the distrust of that person's authority, then we blanket over anybody else like that. Like, so one politician messes up, or like one school leader messes up, and then all of a sudden now it's like you can't trust any politician, you can't trust any teacher, you can't trust any member of the church, like you can't trust any of them just because like a small amount of them do something wrong or abuse their power or something. Now all of a sudden everything, or now even going to the extremes, like one person in authority did something wrong, I can't trust any authority, all authority is bad, which I think that's unfair, because that's judging the whole based on a part. And but it is tricky, it is complicated, but it's important that we know how to submit to authority, because as we're seeing, the results trickle down. Like, so for example, if you as a parent can't learn to respect authority, your kids will watch you, see that you do not respect authority, and then they will not respect you because you're the authority. So this idea is they're only copying what you're doing. Like, if you do not respect authority, they will not respect you, because that's the thing, you're teaching them. So that's the thing, it's this trickle down effect. But also there's a trickle up effect. So this this idea is, if the family is not stable in its authoritative structure, then society collapses. But then, like, because it doesn't mirror going upwards. But then at the same time, on the reverse end, if society starts to not respect authorities within itself, then all of a sudden that trickles down to the family and starts ruining that dynamic. And so, I mean, I know I see this a lot, and you just said, like, you see it in school, like, all the time. And I see this, I've been troubled by this in a lot of different areas, but just this idea is that, I see adults just completely shirking off authority and just not respecting anything, thinking that individual people think they're the authority on everything, and that they can't be told at all what to do, and that they don't have to respect the structure that's in place or anything like that. And I don't know. In just a minor way, I mean, I'll say in sports is one place that I see this a lot. I've been in sports like in all different levels. Like I've been a coach, I've been a supervisor of organizations, I have been a coach at all levels. And then sometimes you run into parents that think that that if it has to do with their that they always know that they don't have to listen to you or to listen to anybody like in the organization.
Yeah.
If they perceive any sort of threat to their child, which like you should protect your child if you perceive a threat, but what people are considering threats aren't like really
it's actually just criticism.
threats.
Yeah,
it's just criticism, or it's just, I don't know, sometimes people go into like hyper rebellion mode, or hyper, like they'll close themselves off completely or completely disrespect all structure and like rebel against everything as long as they have like the smallest cause.
Yeah.
Which, like, for example, like if it's your child, even if it's not, or like people don't know, it's not even legitimate sometimes. Sometimes people say it's about their child, but it's not really about their child.
It's about
but
them.
Because they're saying it's about their child, then they feel like it's justified to talk about. And I feel like I'm not articulating myself 100%. So like I want to put this out there for all the parents listening. It's just like, I am not saying do not advocate for your child, because you totally should, but you just need to be cognizant of like what. Okay, so actually I'm going to use a personal example for myself. So as a coach, I have felt this as well. So I feel like I feel that parental protectiveness to my swimmers, and like trying to guard them against like what I see as injustice, especially in swimming, where it's like I feel a sport that no one else really cares. So I feel like I have to be the one who cares because no one else does. So for example, when I was back at Marywood, we would submit for conference like weekly swimmer of the year award, or swimmer of the week awards. Like, you know, you do well your swimming, you like the coaches submit a nomination, like one of your swimmers describe how all they did and like all the accomplishments they had for that week, and then the conference decides amongst all the submissions from all the teams who's like the swimmer of the week. And so there was one year that I just got really heated about it, because I thought that I had swimmers that were doing just as well, like comparatively, to the ones that were getting picked. Or I got mad because like I wrote like this whole thing about why they did awesome, and then the person that got picked had like a sentence. And so I was getting really defensive, because I thought like my swimmers were getting robbed of this chance of swimmer of the week, and I was getting really heated about it, and I was complaining, and what I ended up doing is I in the improper order, I tried to go straight to the conference, the like head of the conference. Like I tried to go, because we had kind of had like I had met her, we had a personal relationship, so I tried to go right to her, and that was the wrong mistake. I needed to go through my sports information department so that they could go to like a level within there and then up to that. So I kind of jumped the order because I thought I was justified, because my swimmers were being what I thought were being
slighted.
Yeah, exactly. But now I look back at myself and I'm like, that was not the right thing for me to do, because it was not really in the grand scheme of things, it was really not that important. And like even like it was something that was outside of my control. It really wasn't important, and thank goodness it was not a public thing and I didn't say anything to it about my swimmers. But like if I had, I would have reflected to them, one, that it's okay to disrespect the structure, and it's okay to jump above people, and it's okay to be like, I don't know, to rage against be a jerk about certain things, because I had a reason, because all I had was a reason, and that was fine. And and then all of a sudden now I'm justified in my behavior. And then two, I would have been highlighting to them the wrong thing. Like I would have been putting way more importance in these awards than was necessary. Like these were just weekly awards that no one's going to remember the next year. Like no one's going to remember who won each one. And then like the whole point in swimming is not like the awards you get, it's like the times, it's like the hard work and like the physical result that you can control. And even beyond that, it's about sportsmanship and character and developing into a good person, and not about the fancy awards you get. And so if I would have gotten too heated in front of them about this, I would have been putting the wrong message out there.
Yeah.
And
for your team too.
Exactly.
Mhm.
But now I look back on it and I see that yes, there was a reason that I did it, but it like in the grand scheme of things, it really was not a justifiable reason for me
Yeah.
to be like that. And so sometimes I see that, and once again, I know there's a good heart behind it, but it's like sometimes you just need to take a step back and like once again see the bigger picture and like what's important and like what you want
Yeah.
to communicate to the people underneath you and or your kids, or like is this really like, do you want to, yeah, how do you want yourself to look, and what do you want to highlight that's important?
Mm.
um so that's something. And then also just in sports in general, like one example in just not even just my experience with sports, but in the wide sports in general, I'm just going to put one more example out there. I know I'm rambling about this but this is a topic that hits very close to home for me. So for example, especially in professional sports, like our culture treats like referees abysmally, and I hate it so much. The referee is like the authority for the game, but everyone thinks, fans, athletes, everyone thinks it's okay to rage against the official because if like you get the slightest call against you, which by the way, your perspective is biased and you always think any call against you think is like not justified.
Mm-hmm.
So then all of a sudden, because you feel like you have a reason and that you're being slighted in a game that doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of life, all of a sudden you're shouting obscenities and like essentially verbally abusing this person who is technically has authority over you. And it never works, by the way.
Yeah, because you just get a yellow card.
Yeah, I'm getting heated about this now. But like this idea is, but then this thing is that then we don't respect that authority. So then, like, and what are kids supposed to think once they go and they see this thing? If they see the players doesn't respect the authority, so why should I respect the authority? Or if a parent is there cheering at the game and then they're verbally abusing the ref, it's like the kid's like then sees that, and then it's like Dad's not respecting the authority. Why should I respect the authority?
You learn by modeling. I would say that for the longest time, I think I knew how to respect authority, almost to the point too much where I was a little bit more agreeable. So I'm kind of more in the opposite standpoint. Only recently I found that I've been able to stand up for other people.
So the Bible does highlight this idea of submitting to authority. So first, the fourth commandment. Now, a lot of people might not necessarily make this connection, but the fourth commandment is thou shalt honor thy father and mother. And now if you kind of expand beyond that, like, at least I know in the Catholic Church, we expand upon that. And this idea is that obeying thy father and mother extends then also to civil authority and other authority. So like if someone has a just authority over you, you are supposed to be obedient to them. Correct. And you're supposed to honor them when honor is due. So that, and that's because I think, as what we're talking about, is the respect to authority in society and the church and, the faith, as well as then authority in the family, are interconnected. Like this idea is that they're kind of dependent on each other. So like if you, as we just said, like if the authority in society is disrespected, especially within the family, then that's going to start bleeding into the family. That's because we just said, like, so if mom and dad don't respect the authority in life, then the child starts to wonder, it's like, well, why do I have to respect the authority in mom and dad? So like this idea is that they're dependent, and then going the other way. So like if I don't learn to respect mom and dad early in my life, then I don't know how to respect any other authority. Like, so this idea is that it's interconnected. And so like the authority of the family depends on the respect for authority in society. And then the authority in society depends on the respect for the authority in the family. And that there is a hierarchy. There is a hierarchy. It doesn't mean that people are of different values. So that's the thing. It's not like the president is not of higher value than us, and we're not necessarily of higher value, or we are not of higher value than a child. Like none of us are of different value. It's just we are of different responsibility. And I think actually that's part of it, is that people confuse power with responsibility. Even the people that have it. This idea is that being a leader should be a servant experience. Like you should be a servant as a leader. Like you should be serving the other people. You should be emptying yourself out for the betterment of the whole when you're the leader, not asserting power over them to use them for your own devices.
Yeah.
So this idea is then that's just authority. So this idea is actually being a leader. When you do it the right way, it's not like an overtly desirable thing, like, or not like a pleasurably desirable thing. Like
Yeah.
a true leader, like responsibility is something that people don't really like. But that's
It's
what
no
you
fun.
have.
It's no fun to be responsible.
Exactly. But people like power. So like this idea is you should be having but with great power comes great responsibility.
Sure.
Thank you, Uncle Ben.
Oh, I thought you made it up.
Oh, did I? I am Uncle Ben.
But yeah, when I was reading before this in First Peter, I believe it was chapter 2, Peter he gives this teaching of sorts to many believers who were enduring a lot of suffering at the hands of like authority, culture, kind of like what a lot of Christians experience, so to speak, now. But these individuals, they had to endure this injustice, like I said before. But Peter, he called them to obey even when they were being treated unjustly. They were to obey because it was for the Lord's sake. God put these authority figures over them, and obeying them is part of what it means to obey God too. And and this still, rightly so applies today. Unjust treatment in itself does not necessarily mean that we can disobey the authorities God placed over us, but it's still something to consider this story as well, because there is rhyming happening.
I believe you are referring to, and I have it here too, actually. So be subject to for the Lord's sake to every human institution. Live as free men, yet without using your freedom as a pretext for evil, but live as servants of God. Which is from First Peter, First Peter chapter 2. So yeah, and actually, you really highlighted a good point, Joe. Is that we talked about? I said like how the family and society, like those authorities, kind of are interlocks, but then also our submission to authority here on earth and our ability to respect that is kind of pivotal for being able to respect and submit to the authority of God. Because especially as a child, like we have to learn how to submit to authority so that we can learn how to submit ourselves to God. It's like a training ground so much. So like if you're a child and you never learn how to submit to authority and someone tells you that you need to submit and surrender your life to God, like you're going to be like,
you're not going to want to. It's going to influence you to be even more angry. But why would you suggest that?
So like so especially when you're raising a child, like you have to show them what it means to respect authority so that you can teach them what it means to respect authority so that they can come and respect the authority of the one who deserves authority, or who deserves that respect, which is God in the end. And there's a level of that we do believe that those who end up, so in a certain way, those who end up with power have been given that power by God, not necessarily in like they're preordained to be in charge, but like even if whether or not it was preordained or not, and they end up in authority, that authority still comes from God, as in the gospel when Jesus tells Pontius Pilate, you would have no authority. The only authority you have is essentially authority given to you from above. So once again, regardless as to how they got about that power, either way, that power comes from God. So technically, they still have that obligation to use it in accordance with the way God has said. So like everyone, it doesn't matter how you got the power, you still have an obligation to use it in the way that God has instructed you to use it, which is as a servant leader, as to the betterment of the people. So this idea is those that respect that and live by that, we're supposed to respect that by submitting to them, or we're supposed to respecting their authority, or respecting the fact that they are using an authority given to them by God, but just like one or two other places I want to highlight, kind of like in the Bible, as to like where it says like we should be respectful of authority. So I think it's in Romans chapter 13, Paul says, pay to all of them their dues, taxes to whom taxes are due, revenue to whom revenue is due, respect to whom respect is due, and honor to whom honor is due. And that kind of lives off of what Jesus said, give to Caesar what is Caesar's and give to God what is God's. So in our country, like being a citizen grants us certain benefits. So like we get something out of that. So therefore we owe certain things. Like so like we if we are not withheld the perks and benefits of the leadership or like being under the authority of this of said person, whether it's a country leader or, as I said, our boss or whoever, if those are not withheld from us, then we owe our obedience. So we owe a manner of allegiance, not like our total allegiance, like we owe to God, but like we owe respect, as it says, respect to respect is due, and honor to who honor is due. We owe that to them. Like if they're leading us well, then we, or at least not leading us badly. If they're not leading us away from God, then we owe them respect.
God calls us to absolutely unquestioningly submit only to him. No other authority should take his place. No other authority assumes the role of God and demanding us to break his commandments. When an authority commands us to do something like that, something that God forbids us to do, that's the time that we should be resisting that authority figure, that disobeying that authority figure. Generally speaking, disobedience should be the exception, right? But we're called to go out of our way to obey, the true master, obey those also whom God has set over us, right? And we should not be looking for ways, to justify unlawful disobedience. And it's easier for some other people than it is for others, especially coming from their upbringing where they did not have good examples of authority.
Yeah, so exactly what you said, Joe. And I know here I'm referencing the Catechism of the Catholic Church here, and this is just, I guess, highlighting what that church believes. But it kind of can go for a lot of Christians. So it says the citizen is obliged in conscience not to follow the directives of civil authorities when they are contrary to the demands of the moral order, to the fundamental rights of persons or teachings of the gospel, or the teachings of the gospel. So if it goes contrary to morality, if it goes contrary to the rights of people, or if it goes contrary to the teachings of the gospel, then we actually are obliged to not follow that authority. So refusing obedience to civil authorities when their demands are contrary to those of an upright conscience finds its justification in the distinction between serving God and serving the political community, or you could say any other community. So render therefore to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and render to God the things that are God, which is in Matthew, I believe. And then the other phrase, which comes from Acts, when the Jewish leaders tell John and Peter to stop preaching in the name of Jesus, they respond with, "We must obey God rather than men." So anytime that any authority asks you to do something contrary to what God has asked you to do, so like essentially they ask you to sin or to do something morally wrong, to take advantage, to not respect the rights of other people in some way, or to infringe on those, or just do if someone asks you to do something morally wrong, then you have every right to not follow that. And actually, you have an obligation not to.
For somebody who lacks common sense that's listening to us, Zach, what's something that is morally wrong?
If someone would ask you to kill someone, don't do it.
I was going to say something like more specific than that. I'd be like, what if somebody tells you to be a cannibal?
So to be a cannibal, yeah, that would be morally wrong. And
yes, that would be morally wrong. Do not.
So you should not do that. We are to not obey authority when it would cause us to disobey God. So God is always obeyed, and authority is obeyed when it's in line with God. But when it's not in line with God, or at least it's forcing us to disobey God. Sometimes, I'm not really sure if this is true, but I guess sometimes there could be a neutral. There could be like a very in line with God. There could be a very not in line with God. And then there's kind of this neutral where it's like they're not asking you to sin, but they're not asking you to like do something like really, really morally right. It's just kind of a thing. And so at the very least, so you are obligated to disobey when it's something morally wrong. So when it involves any sort of disobedience to God, that is when it's acceptable to rebel.
That's a good point that you brought up about
once again, I hate using that word, to disobey.
One of those points that you brought up about it being morally gray, I'll say this. The way that you can get the discernment for that is by, one, studying God's word regularly to get your armor, two, praying for wisdom and discernment, and then three, consulting with your community of other believers too.
Absolutely. And I think this is actually kind of the biggest problem, because I think people understand that, like in their gut, I think people understand that is that they disobey because they perceive some sort of injustice. I mean, that's the only reason people actually like disobey, is because they think there's some sort of injustice going on. It's just figuring out whether this is a moral issue or not, I think, is the thing that is hard for some people. And because pride can definitely bleed its way in there. It's like you need to like weed out the difference between like my pride is hurt or versus like I'm actually being wronged or I'm actually being asked to do a wrong. That's the thing. And even being wrong, there's a level of like Jesus was wronged. Jesus did nothing. He was God, and he was sentenced to death.
Yeah.
And so there's a level of when it's you personally, there's a level of sometimes we need to accept being wronged, like sometimes, and like that and to just accept that, because that's what our Savior did. He accepted injustice and proceeded to do the will of God, and he proceeded to be humble in that. So when it has to do with our own pride and us being wronged in a way that's about our own pride and things like that, sometimes we're just called to like sometimes we're called to take it and just move on and be, and as they say, be the better man. So in the Beatitudes, Jesus says, "Blessed are they who are persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." At least I'm pretty sure that was the ending part of that. But like this idea is that you are blessed when you are persecuted, you are blessed. Not that you should like go intentionally, not like intentionally go up to someone and be like, "Hey, persecute me because I want to be holy." And but this idea,
when you search the way to be a martyr, you calculate it. That's interesting.
Yeah, exactly. That's not necessarily the right way to go about it. But like this idea is that when it's about you, it's a little different. But when it's about other people, I think that's when it kind of comes into play and the gray area starts to come about. So first of all, you need to decide, is this about you and your own pride, or is this about some bigger issue? Is this is this about a moral thing, or is this about okay, wait, no, sorry. Let me start over. Okay, so first of all, is this about, are you being asked to do something wrong? Are you being asked to disobey? Are you being put in a morally bad situation? Or is your pride just getting hurt? So there's a difference between those two things. Like, so that's the first thing. And so the other thing is you also need to figure out when it comes to the injustice. So is this about injustice, or is this about being asked to do something morally wrong? So if it's morally wrong, you do not submit to that authority. If it's about your own pride and injustice being done to you, there are certain times where you should not stand for that, and there are certain times that you may be called just to accept that.
Right.
So then when it comes to just the injustice, we're going to open that up. So if it's you, as I said, if it's just you, then I feel like there's times, once again, that you need to stand up, but then other times you need to just accept that. But then when it's injustice towards other people, then I feel like that's now another different thing. Because you can't necessarily always just ask somebody to be like, well, you just got to suck it up, man. And so I feel like there's times where we do need to stand up for the people who cannot stand up for themselves when injustice is being done to them. So I think we have an obligation in a lot of senses to do that. It's just knowing when it's a legitimate injustice towards another person.
And that's where the discernment comes from,
Exactly. So what I'm talking about before, in sports, it's not a meaningful injustice. It is just a game. Like,
it's trivial. It's trivial. You're not going to remember it in 10 years.
Yeah. But whereas somebody is, I don't know, being abused by somebody in authority, like
Yeah.
that is an injustice that matters and you need to stand up. But like I think in our society we have a hard time figuring out the degrees of injustice and like what needs to be stood up for and what needs to just be accepted.
Yeah.
And like and what's trivial, as you said, like what's not really of consequence
Mhm.
and what's really important. And then we also
Yeah.
have a hard time trying to figure out like what's again, when is this about injustice, when is this about our immorality, and when is it about pride, and very complicated.
Yeah. Yeah. And I say that more and more we're thinking about these gray areas, these different issues that are coming up that spark a lot of controversy. And it's sparking a lot of lies in a lot of people's minds there that are invading them, that's coming from the enemy, that is making us all confused. This is an era of confusion right now. And more so than ever, everyone is in need of God. They need that whisper of Him to spark some influence on your life in order to draw closer to Him, because people need that more than ever, to be studying His Word and praying for that discernment, because we need that more than ever.
Yeah, and as you said, kind of mentioning on the idea about the evil one, like there is the one side of the spectrum that we talked about before, is when you give the power too much credence. So like when all of a sudden now somebody in power is now an idol, and like you think salvation is in that person,
Mhm.
that's he wants you to do that because that's wrong and that's leading you away from God. But then
Yeah.
on the other side of the spectrum, he's also going to, which most things are like the extremes are always bad and the middle is always good. But like so at the other extreme is of course he wants you to distrust every single authority. Like he wants you to
Yeah.
distrust everything. Because therefore then you'll only rely on yourself.
Mhm.
And therefore you're making yourself an idol. And and once again, as we said before, the more you distrust every authority around you, the less you're going to be able to trust God. So
Yeah.
it's about being discerning. It's not like blindly trusting every single person in authority ever, but like it's about finding that balance. It's about obeying the authority when the authority is within its rights and it's just and it's doing what it's supposed to do, but then knowing when it's time to stand up.
Well
So
said. Yeah.
we are called to live in the middle. Well, we're not going to go into a huge play-by-play, but we'll give you a general idea as to how our Easter octave, our Holy Week, and I guess in our Easter octave week went. Joe,
Mhm.
how was your past fortnight?
Past fortnight, had a wide range of experiences. I would have to say that the week before this last one was very busy before we had our spring break and Good Friday and Easter and the like. Played guitar for Good Friday, which was always fun. Um, in the preparation for Christ's resurrection. I babysat my dogs, my sister's dog, I should say, with my girlfriend, which was a heck of a good time. Spent time at Easter with my girlfriend at my mom and dad's place, which was awesome. Spent the night there. What else did we do? Watched a little SpongeBob day after, celebrating Christ's resurrection with, good old SpongeBob. Uh, and
Yeah.
then we traveled to LaGuardia Airport, where we spent about 4 or 5 days with each other. Flew to Vegas, was only there
Oh,
briefly. Went to Death Valley in California. Went to the Grand Canyon, and then went to Zion National Park, which I've been to before. And the driving, one would think that it was awful, but it was wonderful. Just learning more about each other, growing closer together, her and I. And what else? There were a couple highlights that
go for it.
weren't exactly highlights in the moment. Um, Leading up to the Grand Canyon, like it wasn't like how the Northeast was, humid and gross and everything like that for the first time in 2023. It was pretty temperate, not too bad. But getting to the Grand Canyon was difficult for a few reasons. It was getting colder and colder and colder as further up north that we went. And then we started to get like these tire errors, the PSI was getting lower and lower and lower. And there aren't a lot of gas stations leading up to the Grand Canyon, at least ones that had workable air machines in there. So that was just freaking me out. But wasn't terrible because of the fact that it was probably and this is a rental car, by the way. It was probably because, it's just getting colder, the air, like it's not really expanding. But once we filled it up, everything was copacetic. Restaurants were good. Although I will say my steaks, whenever I did have them, were not as good as the ones I made.
Nice use of the word copacetic, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's my buzzword. Let me see. Anything else that I've done? Oh yeah, and speaking of submitting to authority, tax season is on the way. I've just filled out the rest of it, and it sucked because I've been dealing with it for the past 3 weeks. Slow and steady wins the race, except when it's not.
Except when it doesn't. Yeah, that is apropos. Until we hopped on this call here, I didn't even think about that. And we're like, yeah, we're talking about submitting to authority. Like, I mean, by the time you all listen to this, tax day is going to have come and gone. But
unless you file for an extension.
Yeah, that's true. You are within your rights to do that, to file for an extension. I mean, I would say for 90% of people, you don't really need an extension, but like, you could still do that. But yeah, so this idea of submitting to authority, paying taxes is part of our submission to our civil authority, and which is, we have an obligation to do if we are reaping the benefits from the civil authority. So, but anyway, we're not into the topic yet. So awesome, Joe. I'm glad you had a good time on vacation. What was your favorite part?
It's a tough one. I'd say the impromptu way to Grand Canyon was probably the Hoover Dam. Forgot to mention that. Which was
all the aliens and stuff. Transformers told me they hold a bunch of secret stuff in there.
It was a sight to behold. When I started dating my girlfriend, I told her about the trip also to Death Valley, which I had been on the road to before, but couldn't because there was a flash flood last year that I tried to go to. Anyway, on the way to like the one road that leads to it, one of two maybe, there's this one of two gas stations that you see, and then you see something called the Area 51 brothel. Hilarious. She never believed me until I said, well, there it is.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's it looks, think of like the ugliest color purple that you could ever see, and that's the building.
Wow.
You're so close to Area 51 that you're like, why did they have this place called Area 51 brothel? Could like the most debaucherous stuff be happening in this dilapidated motel
with aliens,
which has like 4 rooms?
Dang, dude.
Yeah. And then she took a picture of it and was like, oh, this is hilarious. And I'm like, you didn't believe me before.
Those are the things that go in the photo albums, right?
Yeah. Yep. And she did the stereotypical touristy thing where pictures of everything. It was great.
Well, yeah, I guess that's how one remembers. So what do you think she would have considered her favorite part?
Probably Zion. I'd say she had always wanted to go. Grand Canyon was another fun one. She had better traction for shoes, so she was definitely worrying about me falling off a cliffside. Which did not happen, of course, because I'm here.
Or are you?
Or am I? You're just talking to an apparition.
Or we may be lying and we recorded this prior to your demise.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you could fall off a cliff and it doesn't mean you died. You could have just fallen off a little cliff. And
I'm actually, my leg is broken right now.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, how convenient. You're sitting. Cool. I mean, that's awesome. I forgot you were going out. You were going out there. So never been that far west. I think Texas.
It's a time. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful, beautiful sight.
I hope to get there one day. I mean, speaking of, I'm traveling this coming weekend. I am headed to Texas. So I'm headed to Dallas area for a conference. So
never been to Dallas. I've only been to Austin.
What?
I've only been to Austin, never Dallas.
I have been to Austin as well. I went to the X Games in Austin one year because it was part of my brother-in-law's bachelor party. We went to the X Games and it was pretty legit. And we stayed at a hotel where Olympic swimmers were staying because they were having like one of the professional circuit, like the professional swim circuit was having an event at the University of Texas, which is in Austin. And so we could have and Michael Phelps was at the meet. And so we could have been staying in the same hotel as Michael Phelps, which is crazy. Allison Schmidt, his very good friend, I saw her in the bar. I was too scared to go up and talk to her, or at least I was going to the bathroom, and I got into the bathroom like, okay, if she's there, when I leave the bathroom, I'm going to talk to her. But then she wasn't there. So I missed my chance. It's okay, though. But yeah, saw an Olympian and possibly may have been at the same hotel as Michael Phelps. Don't know. So that was great. He was literally right across the street, though, because the University of Austin, like or University of Texas, like and other big schools like that, they have a hotel like on campus. Like they have a huge hotel for the sake of housing people for like big sporting events and other things. So we were in that hotel, and more than likely a lot of the athletes were there. But anyway, so yeah, I'm headed off to Texas. I'm going to a thing called Young Catholic Professionals, which is something we're trying to start. It's like a national thing, and you start chapters like in regions. So we're trying to start that up in our diocese that I work at. And so me and one of the president of our upcoming chapter, we are going to the conference to meet some people.
Nice.
So I'm really excited. And believe it or not, the weather is going to be pretty much the same as it is here. It's going to be like temperate. But still excited. Cool. So my past 2 weeks, so Holy Week was really good. I won't go too much into detail about that. Because it went pretty much according to the way I described it before. I mean, Holy Thursday was great. Had the Feast of the Lord's Supper, which was awesome. Good Friday was very meditative. I watched The Passion, as I said. I cried like a baby. And I'm not afraid to say that as a man. The meditative walking, which was really nice. I kind of like meditated on the Stations of the Cross, and just about how much it's like a lesson in humility of like God made himself weak enough to be killed, or weak enough to struggle, weak enough to fall or to ask for help. And that's humility. And yet we are afraid to look weak. Yet God made himself like weak enough to be a baby first, and then weak enough to be like somebody who could be killed. Like, it's just like when we have all these problems about looking weak, it's like, come on, man, like God showed us the way. Humility.
He showed us the true meaning of like how to like show weakness.
Yeah, it wasn't even just about the dying, or I mean, it was about dying for us, but like the path to that is in humility. And but anyway, that's a topic probably for another podcast. Easter Vigil was great, though we had a few snafus like during the ceremony. Like we accidentally repeated a few readings. The organist kind of started playing once or twice while Father was trying to speak. It was there, but it was fun. In the end, everyone had a good laugh about it. Easter Sunday was great. Exodus on 90 is over for me. So I kid you not, after I ate breakfast, though, because I was starving when I woke up, but after that, I literally took an hour-long shower. Like, just I milked the hot water dry. My family had gone to Easter Sunday Mass, which you can go to like one or the other or both, like Vigil, Easter, or you can go to both. I went to Vigil. I did not go on Easter Sunday, but the rest of my parents went to go help with my nieces, like at the Sunday Mass, because they didn't go to the Vigil. But while they were gone, that's all I did. When I had the house to myself, I'm like, I have all this hot water. I'm going to use all of it up. And that environment, I'm not going to be, for everyone listening, I don't do that every time I shower. So I'm not necessarily, I can't say I'm the greatest with it, but like, I'm not killing the environment. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, and just being able to, just have like, I don't know, I want to say indulge, but like just celebrate these things that I can do now that Exodus is over. But trying to also now get that balance, because now I've indulged over the past week, but now I'm like, okay, indulging is not that great either, because now like I'm super indulging and I'm more sensitive to the fact that like when you indulge in something, like it makes you feel crappy. And so I'm like, okay, I need to find a middle ground now. So I'm working on that. So that will be in a later podcast where I talk about that, but working on a middle ground now between what I got out of Exodus and then applying that, but not as extreme, but like applying it to my normal life, the aestheticism and the prayer and everything. So then what else? I mean, just it was a good week at work. Everyone in a great spirit because it's the Easter season. And I work with lots of clergy and lots of people, religious people. It was really great weekend, or really great
Nice.
week. And I've been working on a few things. I've been trying out a few things. Now it's getting warm. That's actually the biggest thing, is that it's warm now and it's fantastic. Spring is here. We can be outside. I love it. It's making my mood so good.
Oh
And
yeah.
I've been trying to get outside and do things. So I've been trying like other things that I can do outside. I know you're into this, man. But the other day, last week, I tried disc golf for the first time. It's like frisbee golf.
Dude, let's get a match going, you and me. Obviously,
Oh, I'm
like
sure
nice
you'll
and
kill me.
nice.
I mean,
Dude, I'm not that great. I'm
dude,
carefree
I'm
about it.
telling you right now, like it was an interesting experience. You realize when you play disc golf, for everyone listening, I'm sure if you have played disc golf before, I'm sure this happened to you. But like if you haven't, I'm sure it will happen to you. Is that you realize you can't throw a frisbee as far as you thought, like the first time you try, like
Mhm. Yeah.
because you think it's like, oh yeah, I play can jam or I play ultimate, I can just like throw, and then it's like you realize these holes are like 300 to 400 feet long,
Oh yeah.
and then like you did like your first timer might not even make it halfway. It's just like, that's that, and it doesn't go on target. It just
Let's
like
do one
veers off.
let's do one in Long Island with Josh.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I mean, I had the benefit of being behind these guys that were at like legit. They were the guys like the backpacks with like the 20 discs in it and everything. And so I was just kind of watching them as I'm like, how do I throw this better? And so I was like trying to like figure it out. I was getting a little bit better. I was throwing a little bit further by the end, but it was definitely interesting. I would be like, this was a good time. And it only like I only went to like the sporting goods store and bought like the $30 like starter set or whatever, like just to go try it. But it was good. It got me outside and it got me walking. It was fun. And I mean, yeah, I'm excited to try it with other people.
Nice. They got some nice art designs on certain discs.
I have seen that. I wouldn't probably say on mine because once again, it's the cheapo starter set.
You know, you can make your own designs
on there. I got like one that's like a leopard and one that's like a shark. I don't remember what the other one is, but like it's.
I gotta go break out mine, see what I can find.
I'm lucky. I'm also happy I did not lose one of the discs because some of them were wooded areas.
Oh yeah.
And I didn't have to get into. I didn't end up losing. I didn't lose the disc, and I didn't accidentally end up getting it somewhere where it was like very treacherous to retrieve. So, but that was fun, and yeah. So I also have been working on. I have like an old road bike that I used way back when I did some triathlons at one point, and it's been in a little bit of worse for wear. And so I've been spending some of my time working on fixing it back up again. Whether or not I invest in cycling more or I just end up selling it or something, like it's been fun to work on it. And what else? I mean, that's been most. Oh, and then got to see the Mario movie with some friends. It was. I'll give it two gloved hands, two gloved thumbs up. I thought it was really good. Now, as I was telling Joe before this, anyone who's listening, if you go to see it, do not be expecting the deepest plot and like most life-altering thing you've ever seen. But if you really like Mario and you're okay with simplicity, then it's a great movie.
So as always, please subscribe to Seizing Valor. Like this video and hit the bell icon if you are new. Also, take a look at our Instagram at Seizing Valor. That is our handle. And we are also on Spotify. Episodes on there are video in addition to our YouTube episodes. Please, if you have any type of comments, please put them in Instagram posts or on our YouTube channel as well. But if you want to keep them private, for example, their prayer intentions, or you want to keep our conversation with us private, it's an open conversation with us. Please email us at seizingvalor@gmail.com, and we will see you next time. Take it away, Zach.
All right. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing myself and Joseph and all of our listeners here today to talk about a very tricky topic. It is simple in the fact that when it comes to submission and obedience, we owe all of it to you. We owe all of our allegiance, we owe all of our respect and honor and obedience and duty, all to you. For you are a good leader, a good father, you are just the ultimate, and you care about us more than anything. You know what's best for us. On earth here, it's a little trickier. Many people have power. Many use it in accordance with your will. Many use it well. There are others who do not. Once again, making things difficult. So help us to be discerning in our submission to authority. Help us to respect those in authority as you commanded us to. Our parents, most in particular, to our father and our mother, and to our other elders, but also to the leaders in our lives, whether that's our boss, whether that's maybe someone in the church or in the political sphere. If those people are wielding their power and honoring their responsibilities in the way that you've asked, help us to have the humility to be able to submit to them and to respect what they ask us to do. Help us to be able to discern when we are being asked, though, to do something that is against your will, and then the courage to stand up and not obey. Help us to remember that, as we said, our allegiance is owed first and foremost to you, and that nothing should get in the way of that. But help us, especially as men who sometimes have difficulty with the word submission. I suppose it's even, as I say it, it's even hard to say. But that, because we think that we need to be the one in power, we need to be the one in charge in order to be manly. But you showed us through the life of your son that true manliness comes in obedience, and ultimately in your son's obedience to you. So help us to learn how to be obedient. Help us to learn how to be humble. And then the one last ask is that help us to remember from the other side of the coin too, is that when each of us have power and responsibility and leadership, that we use it in accordance with your will. For you are the one who gives it to us. So help us to use it in accordance with your will and your teachings, and help us to respect those that are in our care, and to do everything we do for you and for them and for their betterment, and to be true, selfless servant leaders. And lastly, help us to be able to shoulder injustice when it comes our way, at least when it comes to us personally. To when it's about our pride, help us to remember that you said that blessed are those who are persecuted for the sake of righteousness. There's the kingdom of heaven. So help us to be able to endure, but then also help us to be able to stand up when someone cannot stand up for themselves and justice is being done to them. So as I said, it can all be very complicated, but you guide us. So help us to put all things in your hands in this area and to walk forward and trust with you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Son, Spirit. Amen.
Thank you all for attending, and we will see you all next time.
Bye.